Hello there, welcome Genesis Models and welcome to May 2020's Q&A. I've got a nice couple of Q&As for you here to sort of get through. Hopefully you're all keeping safe and modelling away, so good one on that. But let's jump straight in with our Q&A. First off, we have A Victor D. Now A Victor D, he has been using the Mr. Colour GX112 and 113 as clears using the self-leveling thinners. Now he's putting this on top of AK Extreme Polishing Aluminium, and what he's ending up having is it's leaving black spots, right? Now sadly sometimes I get these messages and it's not quite clear because from what he's saying, I've never sort of come across, in all honesty, what I have come across is not when you put gloss coats on top of, you know, the polishing aluminium, but when you put the polishing aluminium on top of, say, a black primer, you can get these black spots, right? So I think I do have them here. You know, this is what we're looking at, the Extreme, is it the AK Extreme, really nice paints there. I think they're enamel based, and basically what this is kind of down to is potentially like the how clean your surface is, right? This is theory one, by the way, because I've got another theory. Is you put your black primer down, and if you sort of touch the surface, you get some grease on there or any kind of contaminant, right? And then you spray your the polishing aluminium down, and you know, any kind of grease can sort of react with the paint and sort of push the paint from that little spot, which then reveals the black primer underneath, which is where you're probably getting black spots. That's sort of like theory one, which is plain and simply all you got to do is just make sure you keep your work nice, clean and tidy. You know, wear gloves so you're not getting grease off your fingers onto your model. If you look at any of my step-by-steps, we always start off with, we sort of brush the model down, we use IPA, rubbing alcohol basically, to clean down the plastic, remove any grease and make sure there's not going to be any reactions, which it looks like we're getting reactions here. The other theory though is because what he's saying he's putting a gloss coat on top of our natural metal finish here, and he's getting black spots. So I'm kind of guessing, because I've not come across this, that I'm thinking the self-leveling thinners, which is this one just here, this is the Mr. Colour self-leveling thinners. It's actually quite a very strong solution, which actually is potentially rehydrating your polished aluminium. Maybe you're sort of spraying down your gloss coats maybe a little bit too thick, and maybe because, you know, this is quite a strong thinner, that it's actually rehydrating your polished aluminium and sort of maybe even eating down to your primer. So if the cleaning your model doesn't work, maybe it's no harm in going off and sealing your gloss coating, sealing your polished aluminium with something like Future, you know, some sort of acrylic based, water based gloss. I mean, we always normally use sort of like the good old Future here, or we do have Alclad's 2 Aqua Gloss. You know, that should sort of stop maybe this eating into your extreme metal. Again, try those two theories and it should hopefully sort out your problem. We then now move to Roger B. Roger B, now what's he actually asking here? Roger B's basically gone off, he's started airbrushing, he has brought an AB605 Super Detail airbrush. He wants to use acrylics and enamels, and basically what he's saying, because it's quite a long email, he's basically saying that when he comes along to spray, it's not spraying out, it's not working. You know, you can go off and sort of, maybe let's bring you in a little bit closer. You could go off and sort of like, you know, try and sort of get some out, some paint to come out. It's not coming out. He's getting his biting point, right? And he's having to sort of like go all the way back with the trigger, or sort of flick it and stuff, and it might work for a bit. Now he does say in the bottom of his little email here, saying that he has cleaned his airbrush. As much as, you know, you've stated, Roger, that you have cleaned the airbrush. Do you know what? That is just sounds to me like a classic case of paint and all sorts of stuff drying up on your needle, on your nozzle, and it's stopping your airbrush from working. So as much as you've said you've cleaned it, I do believe that's down to cleaning. Now it could be that you've cleaned your airbrush, it works fine for so long, and you're starting to get this point where I always sort of go off and teach biting points where you push down the trigger for air, right? And I'll take this out actually because that's making a noise. You push down the trigger for air, right, and then you pull back slowly, and the point in which your paint actually comes out, I call that the biting point. So you get your biting point, and what you're basically saying is you get your biting point, and after a while paint stops coming out, and maybe you have to pull the trigger back and back and back, and your biting point goes back and back and back, and maybe you have to go off and sort of flick the airbrush, right, and it works for a bit. It's basically just building up with lots and lots of gunk. So little sort of tip, right, is take your guard off, and what you can do is right on your needle there, you're probably going to end up with all sorts of paint building up on there. Just pinch it and sort of clean the end of your needle, and that can actually, you know, keep your paintbrush going nicely. It's just a case of loads of paint building up on the needle, rub it off, clean it off, and you should be able to sort of get back into it. If you're still having problems, right, it sounds like you're new to airbrushing, so you know, maybe go back to the Genesis Models basic airbrushing tutorials just on the Genesis Models website, and you know, just clean your airbrush and really make sure that you are properly cleaning the airbrush, because I know it might sound a bit tedious and it might sound like you've already done it, but really when it comes to airbrushing, you know, up there as, you know, the big problems that you're going to have with airbrushing is cleaning your airbrush, right? So really make sure you've got that down to a T, and it should eliminate a load of potential problems in airbrushing. So we then come to our next question, which is Holden Alex 6. Now Alex 6 saying how he's watched my videos, so what he's basically saying here is he's trying to do streaking effects and sort of like weathering, enamel based weathering on models, and his problem is when he comes to doing a streaking effect, right, he basically, you know where you sort of you paint the streaking effect, then you go off, you get your whatever sort of thinners, or, you know, and then you sort of, you know, streak down it. But if you streak down it like say more than twice, the streaking effect just disappears, right? And he's having a problem where he's trying to do the streaking effect, but when he comes to do that stage of the cleanup stage, it's just disappearing, and it's not sort of working. He's wondering any tips there, and would matte coats maybe work better than a shiny future surface? Really, sort of like streaking and weathering is a little bit like airbrushing. I can teach you, but you know what, you need to go off and you actually need to play with it. You need to get the feel for that technique. Now it does sound like you're coming along, putting your streaking down, letting it dry for 15 minutes, right, and then normally you come along with some nice clean thinners and you'd streak down, and with every streak down with nice clean thinners, your streak should get nice and pointier, it should feather out nicely and look all nice. But if you streak too many times, right, you're gonna just wipe away the enamel streaking effect and have to start again. So you've really sort of got to find that point that you're happy with. I normally find that if I just do 2 strokes down, right, don't do any more, I know that if I do say a 3rd stroke, I'm literally going to make that enamel streaking effect disappear, right? You've got to sort of know when to stop, right, and that's what you kind of sort of got to work out. It's normally about 2 strokes, don't go any more than that, or you're just going to obliterate it, right? And then once you've done those 2 strokes, right, it might not look right, but what you do is you just let that dry for another 15 minutes, right, and then you can go at it with another 2 strokes, right? Let it dry for 15 minutes, and if you need to give it another go, give it another go. But you can't really do too many strokes or you just wipe it all away. You've got to let it dry again and then go at it with some more strokes until you've got it as nice and feathered and a nice straight, nice streak as you want it. As for the part about using matte, now you can use matte coats, right? I think it's maybe a bit of a personal preference, but I normally kind of like to have my surface all nice and glossy, all nice and protected, and I do my streaking or any sort of enamel washes really. But if you did decide to go off and sort of put a matte coat on your model and go off and sort of then do all your streaking effects, enamel washes and stuff, you can do it that way. It just means that the cleanup stage, you need to clean up more, right? So with your streak, whereas with a gloss coat, I normally kind of do 2 streaks down with clean thinners to start feathering it in. If you've got a matte coat down on there, a matte coat is a rough surface, and a rough surface means that that enamel streaking effect can sort of bed itself into that rough surface, and you've got to wipe at it more and more and more for it to actually sort of start feathering in and streaking down. You've got to really sort of work at it more, which you know, it sort of depends. I mean, we start getting really sort of advanced here because it kind of looks a little bit different. You can do different things and whatnot, but generally the future, a nice glossy surface, I think is the sort of the best way to go, because you can't really make mistakes, right? With a matte surface, I mean, sometimes I have found that the streaking effects or any sort of enamel wash can really bed into a matte surface, and as much as you sort of rub at it to try and sort of feather it in or streak it down, it kind of sometimes doesn't quite disappear. So it's a little bit more trickier to work with. Future's more of an easy sort of, you know, the worst thing you can do is just rub it away completely. That is the worst thing you can do to your model, which doesn't damage it, it just can be a little bit frustrating. But hopefully that answers your question. So then we move to Matarov. Right, Matarov, hi Bob and all. Great video on the wash here, and I'm hoping to try this myself instead of buying pre-made washes. I have a question. Do you have to use distilled water or will normal tap water be fine? Right, now he's on about the video I made, which is about making your own sludge wash, which as an example, you can go out and you can buy this kind of washes. This one's branded as Flurry Models, and basically it's a simple nice sludge wash that you can go out and buy. It's all nicely mixed up for you, and we fill in all our recessed panel lines and everything. He's on about making your own. In that video I show you how to make it really easy. You know, water, you get sort of you know, pigments or whatever kind of I think I used like a chalk or something, I kind of forget, some pastels or something, and you sort of scrape them out, turn them into a pigment. But basically it's water, pigments, and then you add some what is it, washing up liquid, just to give it that capillary reaction. It's really simple to make. The question to it is distilled water. You can't go wrong with distilled water really. It's going to be better than normal water, right, because it's going to be filtered. Water, in some areas you can have like hard water, and you know, it can react, right? Now normally you can get away with using tap water. Just kind of bear it in mind that if you use tap water, and you know, it doesn't have to be sludge wash, but you know, you're actually sort of painting miniatures and you're mixing a bit of water into your paint or whatever, just bear in mind that if you're having problems or some sort of reactions, just bear in mind that, oh, I've used tap water, that could be the cause of the problem, so go out and use distilled water. But really, yeah, distilled water is probably always the safest bet, but you don't have to. In saying that though, just a little bit of a tip on that one, nice little tip is, if you go off, in that video I kind of made a nice little batch to make, to just paint that one sort of plane. But if you want to make a big batch, say you want to make a pot this size, right, bear in mind that they do put like preservatives or something in here, right, because over time the water is going to go off and it kind of builds up with bacteria and stuff, and it can then have adverse effects and problems and stuff later on. So if you want to make a batch, it's probably best to actually buy the stuff. But if you're just making it there and then for that aircraft, it's going to be absolutely fine. But just remember, over time that water will go off, it'll get bacteria in it, and it can play all sorts of funny stuff with your model. Last question here we have by Andrew from his iPhone. Basically, he's a new guy coming into modeling, and he saw a video where I used an ink and flow improver to sort of make your own little wash for cockpits and doing seats and stuff. And he's basically asking, he's trying to find some flow improver. He's found some on eBay, which is an airbrush flow improver. Is this okay, or where could I go buy some? Now the thing is, I do believe the flow improver I always use is good old Winsor & Newton. I'll use a lot of Winsor & Newton stuff. You know, I've been using it for ages, and you know what? It means I've been testing it, right? I've been using it. I know it works. I know it works with that brand of paints. I know it works with those inks and all this kind of stuff. It is the safer bet to go out and kind of sort of buy the same products, because you know I've been using it and you know it's working. If from what this guy's saying is he's found something on eBay and it's an airbrush flow improver, do you know what? It will most likely work. If you go off, and you can go off and get pretty much anything that says flow improver and it says I don't know, acrylic based, water based, you should be absolutely fine, no problems, right? But test first, right? Because I haven't tested whatever different brand you're using, so just test first. Don't ruin it, throw it on your model and ruin it. You know, just do a little test piece first. If you're not using the same products, it most likely will work. And really, you could probably get away with using washing up liquid instead of flow improver, because really I do believe what's in flow improver is basically washing up liquid anyway. So you know, it should be fine. It is kind of like a basic sort of you know, resource, really. You should get away with it. As for where to buy, if you're having troubles trying to find online shops, you know what, on the Genessis Models website, you guys on the forum, I set up a nice area which was like online stores and manufacturers reviews, and you guys are always posting in there going, yeah, you know, I brought such and such from such and such an online store and I had a great time and it was all good and everything, no problems. You know, there is actually quite a lot of content in there kind of going off, showing loads and loads of online stores from all the way around the world, and you guys saying how good or how bad they are, and it just gives you a nice honest review of all these online stores. So really, go to Genessis Models forum, Andrew, go check that part out. Maybe try and find an online store that's in your country or close to it or something, or not bad postage and packaging, and you'll see what all the reviews from everyone from Genessis Models, all the members, just saying how good or how bad they are, and you can find out whether that's good for you or not. So you know, always go check out the forums. Tons and tons of information on there, which sadly that brings us to the end of our Q&A. Hopefully it's answered a lot of your questions. I mean, there's quite a few that were a bit sort of hard actually this month, but as always, you know, get over to the Genessis Models forum. We have a nice section in there specifically for the Q&A if you want to get your questions in and get them answered for next month's Q&A, or generally any kind of questions or comments are received by email, even phone calls. I've been getting quite a lot of phone calls off you while we've been in this lockdown, but yeah, any sort of questions, I'll sort of compile them together and I'll do a monthly Q&A. So just get your questions in and you can get them answered here on Genessis Models Q&A. So until next time, sadly that is it, but until the next time, my name's Bob Waldron, this is Genessis Models, and I'll catch you later.